I'm Karen Ullman. I work for the Washington State Department of Agriculture, and this is Beth Lawrence. Also with the Department of Agriculture, we both work for the Produce Safety Program within the department. So today's presentation is trying to give everyone in the audience an update on Fisma, specific to the produce safety rule. And in particular, we're getting closer to the time where inspections will be happening on large farms for compliance with the produce safety rule. So this presentation's pretty high level. We definitely encourage people to just jump in with their questions, particularly since we're a small group here. And I've given similar talks on these before, and it's always, typically the audience has like different levels of knowledge in this area, so please do jump in if there's something that really piques your interest.
Or if you have anything to add, too.
Not to call anyone out, but could you please introduce yourself? We just went around the room and did introductions. We've got a small group here.
Okay, I'm Jim Eichner.
Okay. For the food bank. Okay, great. So we've got primarily farms here, and King County, is that King Conservation? What kind of role do you have there?
Maybe more with private landlords.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. It just helps to know. And Ellie, do you want to just introduce yourself?
I'm Ellie. I'm at WSA on the Regional Markets Program, and we're the small farm direct marketing school team. One of the things that we do is help translate some of these regulations to the small farm level. So scale appropriate approaches, cost effective approaches. So I'll be talking about some of the resources we have for small farms related to this.
Okay, great. Yeah, Ellie's going to join us actually at the end here to mention a couple of additional resources. So we're happy to have her as a partner. Okay, so today I wanted to give an overview of what to anticipate with produce inspections in Washington State now that the Fisma rule is finalized and out. So we'll be talking about how our program's organized and what our, basically a status update, like what do we know now? Every time we have these talks, there's always more evolving and things in the future, but we just try to keep people as up to date as possible. So along with that, I want to give a year in review, like what new information have we learned, sometimes that's coming from FDA, sometimes that's from research or otherwise, so we just want to give you an update on the rule if anything has changed. And then I always like to leave some time to actually talk about, okay, what can you do now, some steps going forward, training opportunities, one-on-one, we've got a one-on-one technical assistance opportunity that I'm excited about, and there's also always additional resources, the ones that we want to highlight. Okay, so raise your hand if you're familiar with the Food Safety Modernization Act. Okay, majority of you here. Real high level, the Food Safety Modernization Act was signed in 2011 by the Obama administration, mandating FDA, so our Food and Drug federal guys, to modernize our food safety law on a federal level. For the most part, that just updated law that wasn't to the times or to the current research or technology that we have now. So for the most part, that was an update to an existing law. But for farmers, it's the first time we have specific federal laws for the growing, harvesting, and packing of produce, so on-farm production practices. The rules got the Act has 7 different rules, and they all impact different aspects of the food supply chain. If you're a produce grower in Washington, selling primarily in the state, and you're not doing any processing, the one that you really want to be concerned about is the produce safety rule, and that's where our expertise falls in. If you're interested in processing, I would stay for the next presentation because those are the folks in our state that really do the regulation of processing. So that's the second block over that you see from the produce safety rule, which is the preventive controls for human food. So that's related to food processing. And then there's some additional rules related to the distribution of food or animal food. And then the last three on the bottom are primarily related to our export markets and international markets. So even farms, foreign farms or anything outside of our state actually have to abide by the same rules as you guys do here if they're going to sell into our country.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Are you talking about beef, lamb, pork, and the animal food thing? You're talking about actually like dog food, cow food. What is that animal food?
It's-
What is that little slide?
Go ahead.
Is there a better name for that? Or
It-
is that actually what that
It's actually what it is. It's animal feed.
Yeah, animal food, your domestic animals and also farm
Livestock.
animals as well. We want to make sure that, people aren't putting anything in there that would make the animals sick or,
Yes.
yeah, animal feed.
Yeah. As you know, there's instances of that happening often. So that's just part of this
Yeah.
Fisma stuff.
And that was existing, they just updated those rules. So in a lot of cases, these federal rules, the majority of times FDA is working with the State Department of Agriculture to implement this. So
Yeah.
that's where you're seeing like kind of that hierarchy kind of, it trickles down typically through WSDA, just like, USDA organic standards, actually WSDA, who's one of your certifier options. Same thing with, preventive controls. Same thing even with like USDA GAP audit. They contract with WSDA. They're one of the certifier options for GAP certification.
I think the only time you're going to really see FDA is there's a couple states that aren't going to be doing the inspections as of yet, but also in the foreign markets. I think mostly those people doing the foreign inspections will be straight up FDA, but everything else is mostly done by the states.
So questions on any of those? So today's presentation is going to focus on the produce rule. And so we've developed, with FDA funding, we've developed a program to implement the rule. Beth is going to talk a little bit about that, what our program looks like.
So this is the inspection program. I am one of the inspectors. There's 3 of us in the whole state. I'm based out of Bellingham. We have an inspector in Wenatchee and one in Yakima, and then we have some staff in Seattle as well as Olympia. And as mentioned, we're going to be doing the produce safety inspections on farms starting this coming harvest season. So these are routine inspections. They will be pre-scheduled, so we will be contacting you guys. We want to see you in harvest. We want to see harvest activities, so we're not going to just show up and you're not going to be doing anything. It wouldn't do anyone good. So we'll pick a time that's convenient for everyone. It's not going to be a surprise. There would be someone that would need to walk around with one of us. It wouldn't just be us on the farm by ourselves. Chances are you're going to have someone that's going to have had the grower training go around with one of our inspectors.
And we'll need to get your permission. We'll have you
Right.
sign some paperwork and
Yes.
stuff. So it'll be all, you'll know about it.
Yeah, you're not going to be surprised, which is actually nice for everyone. And then, so as far as review, the review is going to be paperwork. It's going to be observations, of, like I mentioned, walking around, observing harvest activities, and then reviewing records. And an interview, like one-on-one, asking questions about practices that we can observe.
As we've got some GAP people in the audience, I will just insert in there that a food safety plan isn't required
Right.
for the produce safety rule. So,
But it does help us. If you have one, I'm going to just sit through it and review it with you guys, and hopefully that's the things that you're doing is what's on the food safety plan. So it does help everyone to have one, but it's not required. So prioritization, obviously we can't just randomly pick farms. It's going to mainly, right now, there's all these factors that are going to factor in, but we're starting with size. I'll mention that on the next slide. It's going to be history of the farm. Have you had any issues before? It's going to be also, we're going to look And, farms that do go through GAP or other auditing programs and they're passing, they might be a little lower priority because they're clearly already maintaining a lot of the things that we want to be looking at. And that's generally how we're going to come to terms with who and what we're going to be inspecting first.
And another way to kind of think about it, put it in perspective, is that not all farms will need to be inspected.
Right.
Beth is going to go over that. But in terms of numbers and scale, there's about 40,000 farms in Washington State.
Right.
And we're anticipating about 3,000 will actually need to go through this inspection.
And we will be finding out, I'm sure, in the future, once we talk to people, that some of these people will also maybe not even need to be inspected or exempt, and I'll talk about that quickly. So, as I mentioned, size is a factor. The first farms we're going to be starting with are the larger farms that are greater than 500,000. That will be this harvest season coming up in the spring, and then following that, it'll be small businesses and very small businesses. Those numbers are not adjusted for inflation. There is a sheet that does have the current amounts. It's obviously a little higher than 500,000. And so that's when those compliance dates are going to start. The water compliance dates, they've pushed that back like 4 years. So we want you to be doing the things that they're suggesting in the water, and we're going to talk about that a little later. But we're not going to be regulating that until those compliance dates. So.
Yes, and those, so when we say 500,000, that's just produce sales.
Yes,
So
sorry.
It's just looking at that. So some other businesses that are also doing meat and stuff, just keep that in mind when you look at your compliance dates.
Right. Maybe we should add that.
What are you using for that number? How do you determine it's
We are
Interviewing?
no,
Talking to
yeah,
people?
we're talking to
We're
people.
really, yeah.
I mean,
you can observe if someone says they're not 500,000, and then you go and they clearly are a large farm. We'll be doing a little bit of questioning, to find out if they're actually being
So they find
truthful.
gross sales.
gross average
Yeah,
annual.
produce, yep.
After you pay all your labor costs though?
not a profit number? No.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? It'll come back to me.
Okay. All right. So that's just how we're going to be doing that. Who's going to be inspected? We mentioned not every single person is being inspected. People that aren't going to be inspected are exempt farms. Those are farms that are under that margin of less than 25,000 in sales.
That
Annual
number is
produce-
adjusted for
yeah, and
inflation.
that one's the one that's adjusted, so it's
So
obviously
now it's 26,000.
almost 27. And then there's product exclusion. So foods that are rarely consumed raw, like potatoes, for example, they're not going to fall under us because there will be a kill step involved before it goes to the market and people consume it. And then there's something called qualified exempt farms, which I'll talk about on another slide, but those people are going to be selling directly to end users. The majority of their sales are going to be going to end users. So those people won't be inspected. And as mentioned, the people that will be inspected are large farms and anyone in that range that is growing covered produce. But we want to make sure that we mention that qualified exempt farms, even if they're not going to be inspected, they still have a few things they have to take care of on the paperwork record keeping side, that we can keep track of your sales so we can ensure that you do get that qualified exemption.
Yeah, basically, the recommendation now is for all farms to keep sales records so that you can know where you fall in this threshold.
Right.
In case you just have to keep that on file in case you were asked to validate that in any way. Right now, there's no kind of like registration process to confirm that you're a qualified exempt farm. So that's not something you have to do. If you are doing some processing and such, you may be familiar with a registration process, because FDA does require registration for processing facilities. But for just produce farms, that's not required at this time. So we're we're really taking people's word for it at this time.
But keep all your records always, because like insurance for you, always, because things can, as we all know, they can change. So just keep all your records. So that's the one thing we're advising right now. Okay, so going to touch on the exemptions that we slightly mentioned. Qualified exempt, so exempt people are obviously not over 25,000 or 26,999 adjusted for inflation. But the qualified exempt farms you have to be less than $500,000. So for the small and very small farms, you can become exempt. Basically, your food has to be sold, the majority of your food by value is sold directly to those qualified end users I mentioned, which are consumers, not a business like a farmer's market, something like that, or a restaurant or a retail food establishment. So a lot of people fall under that, I think. So that was something that I mentioned we're going to have to see, not proof, but keep those records because, yes.
But this is, you're still not talking about the water testing, right? This is less than boiler safety.
Yeah, so this is produce safety. We're going over all of it, but
They're not exempt from doing the water testing.
if you are a qualified
yes, if you're
exempt
qualified
farm,
exempt farm, you are exempt, yes. You're exempt from the inspection process. You just need to show us that you are exempt based on the fact that you're selling a majority of your food to qualified end users.
so if you're a qualified exempt farms, you have to meet those two requirements. It's the sales and also who you're selling, to.
You have to be under 500,000 and be selling to the qualified end users. Yeah.
So if you're qualified exempt farms, these are the things that you would want to focus on.
Yes. So, yes, qualified exempt requires your records. Like we mentioned, you want to save those, keep those, because we will want to see those in order to ensure that you're qualified exempt. And eventually there'll be a food packaging label that is not going to be in effect until 2020. That's just going to have your farm name, your business address, where your food is grown, and it's just going to be displayed on your food prominently, so you can see the address and the name, so we know where it's coming from.
On lettuce and radishes, and where would you put that label?
It doesn't have to be on the product.
Yeah, if you're selling like at a farmer's market, you want to have it on, if you have a box of things, make sure it's there prominently displayed so people can see your name and your address so they know where the food's grown.
Or on a sign, yeah.
And if you're selling like an online distributor, I guess, you can have it on a website and that will work too. So
They just want to be able to trace the product back if there were to be
any
a recall.
recalls. It's for traceback because we don't require specific traceback methodology, but that's just one thing that would help us in a recall.
This is for the consumer's benefit, though?
It's
For everyone's benefit. Well, it's mostly consumer.
Farmer's market would not, unless the lettuce stays in the box and goes in the bag.
Yeah, it's yeah. You're not going to need to have it like a stamp on a lettuce, but if you have things in bags, put it on a bag, something like that.
the way it's written right now, it's actually very open.
It's open.
So,
A sign,
yeah.
If you have a sign at your farmer's market and it just has your name, just put your address underneath it. It's basically the same thing. Yeah, that's really all we want, and we're not even looking at that.
Yeah,
for
quite
a couple
honestly,
more
this
years.
is not a priority for us in
Yeah.
the next year.
And then, okay, so basically, Fisma, the Food Safety Modernization Act, it's in place to keep buyers safe. It's there to meet the demands, which include the GAP and the GHP audits and their requirements, and it's also a way to manage your business risk. If you remember a lot of the outbreaks, especially the lettuce one that was recently, the cause was really undetermined, but it really hurt the entire market. So it's really beneficial for everyone. You want to basically keeping your colleagues in check as well as protecting your buyers, because if someone's doing the wrong thing, that can potentially hurt you as well. If you're growing the same products, or even if you're not growing the same products, if you're from the same region, So it's just because our market is so broad now, we can ship things instantly across the world. We just want to have a way of keeping everyone safe and keeping everything in check.
And for those of you that are following GAP or have a GAP certification, really you're in a good position. A lot of the practices are quite similar. There's just a couple of small things that you might want to make sure that you've got in place, or minor tweaks. And we're going to show you a resource later on that will actually help you review and think about comparing those two different types of standards.
The Fisma standard is actually a little bit less stringent in a way. They do overlap a lot though. So, and there's a little bit more as far as from the water side, I think. So,
Yeah.
But that's not 100% completed yet, so we don't know. Anyway, so.
We'll talk about that.
Yes,
yeah.
we will. And Karen?
Yeah, so I just want to touch on some points that have come up in this previous year. So yeah, let's dive into the water topic. So a couple of things have happened. There has generally been pushback on FDA about how challenging it is to implement the water section of the rule, particularly the water section related to production water, so your irrigation water. There's pushback in terms of, the testing frequency, what type of test is required. One of the first wins, I think, for produce farmers is that they expanded the list of approved methodologies for water testing. So by methodologies, I mean what method is the lab using to test the water sample. So we've got there's a new fact sheet from FDA on that. Originally, there was only one type of test specifically outlined in the rule, and that was limiting because there was only one lab in Washington that was offering that particular test. And that's important. That's important also because there's a holding time in which you want to get that sample to the lab within, so that the sample is most accurate. And if the lab's far away, that makes it even more challenging for farms to get the sample there. So they've expanded the list, thankfully, to include more options.
It's like 9 now.
Yeah, so now there's 9 different options for different types of methods. Various methods are provided at different labs. So there's a fact sheet. Let's see. I've got the fact sheet here. We also have more copies of this on our vendor booth out in the vendor area. So there's 9 different methods that you could use for testing your production water. These methods test for generic E. coli. That indicates if there's likelihood of bacterial pathogens in your water. These 9 methods not only give you a presence or absence test, like a yes or no if generic E. coli is there, but also give you a count of the indicator organisms within that sample. So that's helpful for seeing the trends of your water over time. The second win, I would say, for produce farms is a little bit more flexibility in relation to post-harvest water, so the water you use for washing your hands, for washing produce, anything during and after the produce is harvested. They've come out with an additional list of methods that you can use for post-harvest water. For post-harvest water, you can use just a presence or absence test, and that's this list on the back of the sheet. What's good about this is that these tests are a little bit less expensive because they only do the presence or absence test. So that's a resource for you guys. I would recommend using the list of approved methods, as that's kind of a new national standard that most farms are following. The other thing to know about the water section, is that FDA back in almost a year ago now said that they are looking at reviewing the water section. That means they may either provide additional guidance for how to implement the water section, or and they've still got this on the table, they may consider rewriting the water section at this time. I think that's part caused by the pushback, and also probably to a large degree has to do with the Yuma outbreak that was pulled up on the screen earlier, just because the evidence was so inconclusive about how that contamination happened. Water is one of the theories, but they're not sure, so they are revisiting that section. So we're kind of in a holding period, but for now, the recommendation is to continue doing what you're doing in relation to what your buyers are requiring. So if you're testing already for that purpose, just keep doing what you're doing. I would maybe follow one of these methods if you weren't already. But for now, FDA said that you do not need to invest in a lot of testing in order to meet the rule as it's written. So just to give you a little bit of sense, for production water, there's like an initial baseline of samples as the rule's written right now that they're asking farms to collect. So for like surface water, they're asking for more samples, which is around 20 over a 2 to 4 year period. For groundwater, which is a little bit less risky, less environmental influence, there's about 4 samples that they're asking farms to gather as a baseline. So right now, you're not required to meet those testing frequency and numbers as they're looking at it again.
Do you use municipal water, does that count then?
Municipal water's fine, yeah.
So it's not exempt, but municipal water will be tested regularly. So those records will be available to you, and then we can use those as, you won't have to probably test, no.
Yeah.
It's an expensive fee to use municipal water, but it's
Right, it's definitely worth
Yeah.
it. The only thing that we've been running into, and I don't know what we're gonna do about this yet, because we kind of brought it up at the last training, but Washington has 2 different classes of water systems. There's Group A and Group B, and the Group B systems are not generally tested regularly. So I would keep an eye on where your water is coming from, even if it's municipal, because some of the smaller systems are Group B, which means there's less than 15 service connections. And those are not required to be as stringently examined.
Yeah.
So just make sure.
I mean, that's just a perfect example of how regional variance really affects your water system and your water table, and I think folks are coming to that realization, and even comparing across different states, like one standard may just not be able to fit for everyone. So,
Okay. Yes.
questions?
I mean, this is a bit of an urban thing, but in Redmond, they are, because of Microsoft roof water, rainwater, they are exploring,
Catchment?
for rainwater and its safe use on landscapes.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that's another bag being opened up.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's just a matter of time before somebody says, why can't we use this roof water to water this community garden over here?
Well, you can if it falls within standards.
Yeah, I mean, rainwater, we would just,
Yeah.
we would treat it as surface water. It's going to be a little bit more risky than your groundwater.
People are using reclaimed water systems, so I mean, that does exist. It just has to fall within our, less than the CFU count for your pre-production, and then presence, absence of.
I mean, then it
E.
really
coli.
comes down to, is it coming in contact with the produce,
too,
or
yeah.
is it I mean, are the crops,
There's a
is
lot
it
of,
just landscaping, or is it produce? Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways
Yeah.
of mitigating. Also, if you do have poor water quality, there's ways around. You can still follow the rule even if you don't have the best water quality by just not
there are
applying
options.
it onto the edible portion, a die-off, waiting for a die-off period. There's a lot of ways around. Yeah. So.
So if you're looking for labs that offer these standards, 2 resources help you identify which labs to go to in your area. Obviously, a lab closer to you would be beneficial in terms of those hold times, and also just for your own convenience. So Washington State University has a map specific to this resource, and various labs across the state. Also, Department of Ecology certifies or accredits labs, so basically gives them a stamp of approval that they're using good practices. Historically, Department of Ecology has done that accreditation for drinking water standards and other requirements, and so this is a kind of a newer area for them, but they also do have a resource where you can sort by lab, region, and method. It can be a little bit confusing, so if you have questions at all, we're a resource for that. And since if you don't have like a microbiology background or any kind of science background, and which I don't necessarily, so these can look kind of overwhelming. So my recommendation would be to just send the lab this specific resource and ask them if they offer any of those, and they can help you think about methods for testing and provide a sample bottle for you so that you can actually go out and do those testing. Before I keep going forward, are there other questions on water? Because we could certainly take up a whole workshop just on water. I'm curious with your Primus, like what are you, not to put you on the spot, but what kind of testing requirements do they have under that certification?
Testing once a year.
Yeah.
And we test during harvest time. And one of the things that we do specifically, since we use surface water and you're going to get some pathogens, is we only irrigate through drip tape.
Oh.
So it doesn't ever touch
Right.
fruit. And so it's a little easier standard. But when we're spraying, just let's say the final fungicide application before harvest, it can be just within a few days of time. So we'll use municipal water for the sprayers
Oh, wow.
for foliar application.
That's amazing.
Whereas for doing ground application, we can use surface water. But doing foliar, those are separate sprayers. So like a glass sprayer, we would only use municipal water. And that's written into our plan.
Well, that's perfect. I hope everyone's doing
Well,
stuff like
we
that. That's
also need
wonderful.
to treat it for the surface water treatment system before it goes out to drip tape.
Oh, wow.
But that can be expensive too. But
Yeah.
if it gets to a certain point, there are people out there with things to do that. So that actually good. If you have a spot where certain time zero is a problem, as long as you have a plan and you put, okay, if our levels get above this amount, then this is our backup plan for treating it. So you can't just, oh my gosh, we have a problem with water quality, from whatever you're using, pond or lake or river. There's going to be times here where it's worse. So, if you inspect the water before every irrigation,
Right.
you have that written in. And then if you see these things, then you do these things. And there's steps you can write in, even if you have, surface poor quality water, quality water. We have sand filters, but there's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you're doing drip tape and it's not coming in direct contact with the edible portion, you really don't need to be too worried about that. That's one of the things that you can do to kind of mediate potentially poor water quality is just apply it to the ground. So
Yeah.
that sounds great.
So the standards for growing, harvesting, packing, and holding of produce helps farms understand, how they define harvesting, packing, and holding. I would say this would be applicable more for businesses or farm businesses that are kind of on the line between a farm and a facility, so that maybe they do some minimal processing. That fact sheet that draft guidance would help you kind of understand where you might fall within that. Same thing with the guide to minimizing food safety hazards of fresh cut produce. So if you are doing minimal processing, this would be another resource that I would look into. And then specific for our small and mid-sized farms, they did put in, it's basically, the small entity compliance guidance is basically an interpretation of the rule that I think is a lot easier to understand than actually reading the rule itself. It's a little bit more in plain language. So I just want to highlight those as some resources that are out there right now. Okay, so we mentioned that there's enforcement. We mentioned that we would not be enforcing the water section of the rule right now. So that's That's true. There are a couple other things that they are applying enforcement discretion, which basically means they will not be enforcing that section of the rule. So those other aspects are summarized in this document you see here. We can hand that out to you at our vendor table if you're interested. Just so you guys know, FDA has enforcement discretion in particular for the commercial processing exemption. So if you sell a fruit or vegetable that is going, either you do your own processing or you sell it to a processor who's going to go through like a kill step, or that'll reduce the pathogen load, you can actually document that, and that would provide an exemption from you from the rule. But right now, FDA is not requiring that written records at this moment, as they need to clarify what that would look like and how that would work in terms of the supply chain.
But keep them, like, keep all records.
Yeah.
Always.
So, but right now they're giving the written assurances for that commercial processing exemption. They haven't clarified yet, so at this time they're not enforcing that aspect. The other piece of this fact sheet that's really useful is it helps clarify for farms, if you're a farm or you also do processing, it helps clarify those businesses that are falling into the gray area. So if you do on-farm processing or you sell to a food hub, those kind of questions, this document helps to clarify the extended enforcement periods for those that are falling in that gray period. Questions on any of that? It seems like most people in the audience probably are just on the farm side, so it might not be as applicable for you guys. And yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about what we can do, what can farms do now? So whether you're new to this or not, there are some really great resources that are even more state specific that I think would provide a lot of clarity for folks.
The produce rule training requirement, as I mentioned earlier, when we come for the inspection, we're going to want to see that there's one person there on your farm that has taken this grower training course, and hopefully that is the person that will be walking around with me, but you never know. But there should be one person there. Sometimes people have a consultant. The consultant works for a couple farms and they have the grower training, but ideally you want to have someone that's on your farm all the time or often that has the grower training, at least one person.
Yeah, so the requirement in the rule is that one person has to go through FDA approved training. Currently there's only one training available right now, which is the Produce Safety Alliance Grower Training. It's a collaboration of all those entities, FDA, USDA, and Cornell University. They're offering this basically standardized curriculum. It's an 8-hour class. Has anyone attended it? No. Okay, so we've got one person in the room. I would recommend the training whether or not you're exempt or not. It just gives a really good, I think it's a great next step for understanding the different aspects of the rule. Yeah.
What is the WSA doing as far as reaching out to farmers and helping them get these individuals trained on their farm? Are you offering like local courses?
Yeah. So we're helping to support this Produce Safety Alliance training. And then there's actually we're doing technical assistance. Yeah, so this is, if you're interested, there's about 6 trainings that we're helping to offer about every year. So in this region, both in January and February, those would be the closest to folks if you're local here, Tacoma and Anacortes. The cost of these workshops is about $35. Again, it's an 8-hour class. You get a binder and a certificate for attending the course. So it is one step towards compliance with the rule, and also just really good education.
And I will say that at this point in time, these are really subsidized right now heavily, and we don't know if it's going to remain like that in the future. So if you can get as many people into this training as possible when it's affordable, it could potentially get more expensive to take these courses. So you might want to do it as soon as you can. Yeah.
doesn't has
No, it
doesn't have an
doesn't
expiration date at this
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
So yeah, just get as many people as you can trained now because you never know.
But to your question, I think one of the primary things that our program is doing right now to reach out to growers is actually to do educational visits on farms, which we're calling on-farm readiness reviews. They're kind of like a dress rehearsal to an inspection, but it would not be an inspection at all. We wouldn't be taking any notes or photographs. It would be walking through, looking at practices, really just having a conversation. It would be between the grower, WSDA, and any other entities that any other entities that the farm would want to include, other employees, if they would want to include in extension or any industry folks. I mean, that would be okay with us. There's no cost for this. It would be voluntary. We would like to come out during harvest time. That would be ideal, but any other time where you've actually got some activities going on, at least like growing or maybe any other packing activities. So this is one of the programs that we're offering right now, so through our program. So we've got, there is a flyer with more detail on it. You can also find this at our vendor booth, and it talks about how you can actually get signed up for this, or at least just start having kind of conversation with us about, if you have specific questions, are you exempt or not? Are we, should you anticipate an inspection on your farm? We can help answer that.
And it's really for everyone a learning experience because these inspections are new for us too. So the on-farm readiness is, we're all just trying to help each other get through this, and it's like we're learning just as much as you guys all are. So
again, it's open to everyone, but I think it would be even more useful for farms that have been through the Produce Safety Alliance training first, just because it gives you that baseline foundational knowledge. And then we can kind of get right to the practices when we're actually out on the farm, and we don't have to, go over the details of the real. However, we're open to whatever works for farmers too. Typically, these are going to take about 2 hours, but we can work with you guys. We'll be flexible on that.
It could be question and answer sessions too. We've done a couple of those where, there's not actually harvest activities going on, but you want to just have a sit down and maybe tour the facilities, and the farmers want to ask questions and walk around, and that's fine too. So it really, whatever suits you, we can do that.
Way back to the exempt rights and produce, things that need to be cooked and stuff. If you grow a mixed bag of things, and say you have 50,000 pounds of potatoes, well, they're exempt.
Mm-hmm.
If you got so much of this over here, so is the dollar amount based on the dollar amount of all crops, or
Yes.
Of all produce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you consider, all your products.
It's a really good question though.
Yeah.
Because that's good to point out. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
So if you grew broccoli and potatoes, the potatoes wouldn't be covered, but your farm overall might be need to be inspected depending on your sales.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and so for farms with covered and non-covered products, my general recommendation is to treat all your crops the same and have practices that fall in line with the standard. I think it's easier from a management perspective, because if you don't, then you do have to have some additional considerations related to the commingling of product, and also the use of tools in between dealing with one product, covered product and a non-covered product, just as you might with organic and non-organic produce. I see the stress in your face. Yeah.
It's kind of like a business park, because I have 4 entities on the farm.
Uh-huh.
The owner of the farm and 3 people leasing property. And the 3 leasing are growing vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
The owner is growing beef and hay. So is the farm going to get inspected
That would be what I would imagine. Yes, that's what I.
Is it one business?
There are three different. No, yeah. If they're
We would assess each
one
business separately.
If they are over the $25,000, we would inspect them all separately. So, but that's one of the reasons why I think that some of these rules are, like the water is really complicated, because there's an example right there. Now, where does their water come from? You
Who
have one
owns the
water
water?
source. But I'm saying, but it's from the owners. It's not necessarily the people who are leasing the land, correct? So that's what I think is one of the reasons that this water is going to be reevaluated, because there's a lot of different factors. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like I was just at another conference and they were talking about how farms in New Mexico along the Rio Grande will do a lot of crop rotation depending on the flow of the water through the river. Not just crop rotation within their own property, but maybe will lease a different crop or a different land. And so the question is, do I need to be collecting water samples even during periods where I'm just doing a rotational crop, or I've got a plot of land that's both got covered produce one year and non-covered produce one year? That's like an example of a really great question that is stumping them at this time. And so that's one of the reasons why they're reassessing that.
Yeah. Because of questions like that. So keep asking them.
Yeah, keep asking them. And if there are things that, we can't answer, another option, although I always hesitate on this because it can take a long time to get a response, but there is a formal submission option online to ask FDA a question. It's called the Technical Assistance Network. And so if you submit a question to that, they are required to provide a response to you. And the more specific you can get, the better.
And the longer it takes, if they were to say, but that's true too. And it's a legal answer, so they have to generally confer with lawyers and things like that. So, yeah.
So we've done a couple of these so far, and we're hoping, there'll be interest in this. There is, and I didn't bring an example here, but if you take us up on this opportunity, you'll get another manual. You'll get a whole manual that it goes. So what's different between this and the PSA training is the PSA training talks about GAP and Fisma together as one kind of concept, risk assessment, teaching tool. But with this, it actually gets a lot more specific to your particular practices. And the manual that we provide with this provides both the aspects of the rule and ways that we're looking for farms to meet that rule. So it gets you a little bit closer to what an inspection would actually look like. And, we would have to be able to argue, if we see anything that, seems out of line, we would have to be able to validate that based on the specific aspects of the regulation. So it can give you a little bit more specific lens into, what to expect. Questions on that?
General question. What's the WSDA doing as far as making the website, the WSDA website, more helpful? When I started looking into this a few years ago, it was really hard to find
Yeah.
information about what exactly applies to small farmers. What is the WSDA doing to help somebody that knows nothing about this, wondering about their farm, go to the website and get like the straight high exempt?
Yeah, that's a great question. The website is a little bit archival. Good news is that we are doing a whole agency-wide update to the whole website over the next year or two. We have more recently updated our specific program pages that I'm hoping is a little bit easier to navigate. That's agr.wa.gov/produce safety.
You can ask us personally too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like, my cards, Karen's cards, we're all over there. You can literally just send us an email and we can respond and go over things if you have any questions whatsoever.
Yeah. So we also brought up Ellie here from the regional markets team to talk about some additional resources that their program has actually produced with the, as she mentioned before, they've got the lens for small and direct marketing farms and how to navigate all of this from, a marketing perspective and making sure, small businesses, can navigate all this and still stay alive.
Hi there. Again, my name is Ellie Watts. I'm on the Regional Markets Program at WSDA. So we are the Small Farm Direct Marketing Program and the Farm to School programs together. We work very closely with the Produce Safety Program, but our emphasis really is on small and diversified farms. These are farms selling, beginning farmers, farms selling at farmers markets who really have a regional focus. And so a lot of the work that we do is translating and educating how some of these large requirements and regulations work at the small farm level, what that means to implement for small and diversified farms. There's so many things I want to touch on. I'll start by talking about this Bridging the Gaps guide. I have an example here that I'm going to talk about in a little bit of detail, and then we have more at our table inside that I'm able to give out. I'd love to have a conversation with you to make sure that it's a resource that will be put to use so I can help orient you to the guide a little bit better, but I'm happy to hand them out if it's something that's going to be useful for you today. So our team originally started doing education about GAP certification for small farms as a means to enable new market access, particularly in our farm to school and farm to institution program. And as the produce safety rule is coming about, there's a lot of interest and desire for knowledge, especially how it applies to small farms. And so we recently updated this publication. Would you actually mind holding this for me as I go through it? So it's called Bridging the Gaps. It is based on the USDA GAP-GIP audit. It's laid out in that format, but we've completely rewritten it with new information about the Fisma produce safety rule. So just to orient you, we have a sort of introductory chapter that introduces concepts of food safety. Why are we talking about the things that we're talking about? Why is E. coli the indicator organism that we're looking for when we are doing water testing, for example? There's an extensive chapter on who is covered and who is exempt and qualified exempt from the produce safety rule. So it goes through not just the monetary thresholds, but it has the details of which products are exempted, what types of certifications you need if you have one of those processed food items, that sort of thing. It goes into quite a great bit of detail. And then when it gets to the specific standards, you may be familiar with the GAP-GIP audit, and it goes through the audit in different sections on the farm. We've kept a lot of this information the same, it hasn't changed. And because there's so much overlap between GAP standards and Fisma, we didn't repeat it to say Fisma. Where they are different, we've included sections, I don't know if you can quite tell, but written in a different color font. It's very highlighted, and it tells you the specific Fisma section that it's referring to when there is a different standard that you should be aware of. So water standards are different between GAP and Fisma, and so when we talk about water within the GAP audit, we say the same principles apply. We're testing for the same things, and the principle of having safe water and the risks that you're using in your evaluation are the same, but the specific testing standards, testing schedules, and tests that you use are different under Fisma. So we go through the entire book in that way, and then the next thing that I want to point out is the resource sections at the back. There is an entire section of records templates that are there for you to use. You can pull them straight out of the book, and we also include them on a thumb drive in a Word format so that you can edit them appropriately for your farm and then use them as is. And these are, there's an entire section for any records that Fisma requires. There's a template for that the Produce Safety Alliance has made that meets all of the standards. And then there's examples of other templates that you can use for a GAP-GIP audit that may be helpful to you in thinking about food safety on your farm, may or may not be required under Fisma. There's also additional information fact sheets in here, some of which they've mentioned, including the required testing methodologies, information on the on-farm readiness reviews, information about the resources that WSU Extension offers. There's a huge number of resources. It can be a little confusing to know exactly which ones you need and how to find them, so we try and offer it here. And then I also want to emphasize that our programs are here and trying to offer education and outreach to farmers in any way that you're interested in receiving it. So we offer a number of training opportunities, and we have been grant funded for a lot of these on-farm workshops and farmer workshops, and we're now moving on to general funding, so we have more flexibility in offering these workshops, and really what we're looking for is interested groups of farmers who want to bring us in, and we're happy to host a workshop that meets your specific needs. So if it's talking more about exemptions and qualified exemptions for small farms so that it's very understandable, and walking through how to complete those records, we can do that. If it's a more general overview of food safety and what you want to keep in mind, we can sort of tailor it to that. So if any of this is of interest of you, please come talk to us at the table. We can give you our information, and we're here to answer questions specific to your farm, specific to your situation, and sort of point you in the right directions of the resources that are out there. They just may be a little complicated to find.
Looks like let's pause and take some questions. I think we're really close to the end of time here. So yeah, go ahead. And I'll just leave these up here.
Sure. Okay. I wasn't aware that there were fewer. Thanks for letting me know. I will say the content of the guide is largely unchanged. We added new chapters in the beginning to provide information about the Fisma produce safety rule. And then we call them inserts into the rest of the guide. So the rest of the content hasn't changed. We sort of added a sticky note of where Fisma is different, but it's pretty much the same. Totally. I will maybe talk about how we've drastically overhauled everything and reel it in a little bit more. It's largely the same. It's a little bit reorganized with new information about Fisma.
I think we might be coming to the end of this. So I wanted to take burning questions. We did have 2 more slides. They just provided some specific suggestions on practices that align with both. Maybe we can take one more question. Is there anything else that we didn't get to? Here's some other general recommendations. I will say, sorry, Ellie, your section kind of got cut off here with one other thing that I'll mention. Between GAP and Fisma, again, GAP requires a food safety plan, Fisma does not, but records are required under Fisma for farms that are covered. So qualified exempt farms do not need to have these records, but if you're interested in starting to adopt some records, baby steps, this would be a great resource to pick up on our vendor table as a kind of launching pad for what kind of things you might want to keep track of. Again, come see us at our vendor table if there's additional questions you guys have or things you want to discuss specific to your operation.